Welcome back to the Inspire Health podcast, and we are thrilled to have Dr. Jerry Tennant with us again today. So, if you guys have been following my work, then we had Dr. Jerry Tennant on for the cleansing and detox series that we did, and we wanted to bring him back for this specific series as we're coming to the end of our Creating New Earth, a collaborative mission. Because I feel like Dr. Tennant's been an avatar in this industry for a long time and has done such a brilliant job of helping us expand our concept of healing and different areas to look into it and bridging all these different areas of the body together. And if you're not familiar with it, I put a link to that previous episode. We did a really good job of an overview of the concept of healing as voltage, which was a health system that was invented by Dr. Tennant. So watch that one. It'll give you a really good overview. We're going to dive deeper into some aspects around scalar energy and emotions and some of these pieces of it as well. But Dr. Tennant is the founder of the Tennant Institute for Integrative Medicine. He is a world-renowned physician and integrative health practitioner. I came across Dr. Tennant's work over a decade ago, and it really helped me refine my practice significantly because it just pulled so many pieces together. And so this is the big book here, the Healing is Voltage Handbook. And I think probably it's got highlights on about 90% of the pages through there, almost highlighted completely. And then some of these other ones here too, Healing is Voltage. This one goes through some of the muscle batteries that we talk about. And then there's also Healing is Voltage Cancer on Off Switches. And his most recent one is Healing is Voltage Scalar Energy. And after our last conversation, Dr. Tennant, when we did the episode with the cleansing and detox, we talked a little bit about scalar energy, and we wanted to do a follow-up at some point. And you had mentioned to me at that point that who really helped you was Dr. Ibrahim Karim, who's done a lot of work in biogeometry. And so shortly after that conversation, I got all of his books and I devoured those books. And then I actually signed up and did the foundational training and then the advanced training with them to get a better concept of scalar energy as well. So it's absolutely fascinating. And I feel like this is really the next level that we're starting to learn to integrate on where healing's going to be going. So I'd love to get your perspective on scalar energy from your point of view, and then we can maybe tie that in, bridge it with emotion. So I'm going to pass it over to you and welcome you back to the show again.
Well, thank you very much. Appreciate it. It's always an honor to be with you, and hopefully I'll be able to share some insight into the concepts about scalar energy and the magic that it works in the body. So with your permission, I'll just dive right in here. Let's see.
Yeah, jump in. I've got it on screen share so you can, so anybody out there that is listening to this on audio, if you can, check out the YouTube video. We'll put the link there too, and you can watch the PowerPoint presentation that Dr. Tennant's going to be sharing with us here as well.
So I think that many of you are aware of my history, that, I'm an ophthalmologist and was having a lot of fun in ophthalmology, did a lot of fun things in my career there, developed outpatient surgery, did the majority of the research for LASIK surgery, et cetera, and was bopping along and, had the great American dream, had a great wife who loved me, had great kids, had a practice, had an international reputation. And then slowly over time, I just simply got to where I couldn't do it anymore. I got to where I could see a patient and figure out what was wrong with them, but I couldn't remember how to write a prescription. And also when I could be just sitting and all of a sudden have spastic movements all over, which doesn't work really well if you're operating inside of somebody's eyeball, and just overwhelming fatigue. And so I just faded away and finally had to quit work in 1995. And so I went to the best doctors I could find. They said, well, you got 3 viruses in your brain. We don't know what to do about it. So don't call us, we'll call you. So I had a choice of either go home and die or figure out how to get myself well. And obviously I chose the latter and began to figure out that every cell in the body had to run at a pH of 7.35 to 7.45. And what that really means is pH is simply the measurement of voltage in a liquid. Voltage in a liquid, huh? So once I figured out how to measure the voltage, that cells need 25 millivolts to run and 50 millivolts to make new ones to repair things, and that all chronic disease starts when an organ loses its power. Let me say that one more time. All chronic disease begins when an organ loses its power. And it loses its power by flipping polarity, which I'll discuss as we go along. But the interesting thing is then that I developed the techniques to tell which of our circuits are on. Actually, our muscles are stacks of batteries. Our muscles are rechargeable batteries, and when it's stacked together, form what have been called acupuncture circuits. So every organ has its own battery pack, which is an acupuncture circuit, and provides the power. But if that circuit loses its power, then the organ doesn't have the power to work, doesn't have the power to keep itself repaired, so we get sick. It's as simple as that. Now, I put this slide up with some sadness, and that is that no matter how hard I try, I find I have trouble getting people, even in my own family, to understand that you have to keep checking your power circuits to see that they're on. And if you don't, then eventually an organ will fail you and you'll be gone. So I've lost my wife, I've lost my son, because I just couldn't get them to check their circuits on a regular basis. So if you think it can't happen to you, think again. If you don't learn how to check your circuits and you do it on a daily basis, you will get sick and you will not be here. It's inevitable. And so I hope that you take this personal grief and warning about, don't do like I did, think that, I was invincible and just fade away and then have my family fade away. So I'm working very hard to try to teach people not to make the mistakes that me and my family have made. So if you keep your power on, you will be much like the image on the left. If you don't, you'll be guaranteed to be like the image on the right. So people wonder, well, does this guy know what he's talking about? Well, I've been biohacking since 1965. So I've done a whole bunch of stuff. And if you want to know about it, you can stop the video and read it. And my work has been evaluated by many other people around the world and have been acknowledged for my work. And here's some of the acknowledgements that have come my way, including the Order of St. Sylvester, which is similar to the Nobel Prize, only given by the Vatican. I was very honored to get that, especially since I'm not Catholic. Now, I start my lectures by noting that I'm not speaking with my Texas MD license. I'm speaking with my Arizona MDH license. Texas does not allow its physicians to talk about things that aren't standard of care medicine. And obviously, the concepts that I'm talking about are often you can find individual pieces of standard of care, but not put together like I do. Also, I follow copyright law. So the images that you see in my lectures have been licensed under copyright law. So the things that cause us to lose power, I've developed this mnemonic, and we've discussed this in great detail in a previous lecture, and I won't go into it as much detail in this one, but the mnemonic is don't eat the turtle soup. So we've identified 5 different things that cause us to lose power in one of our circuits, which causes the organ that's powered by that circuit to malfunction and quit on you. So don't is for dental infections. When you get an infection in the bone around a tooth, it will take out that circuit. Eat is emotions. The is toxins. Turtle is thyroid, not enough thyroid hormone. And soup is for scars that block the circuit. So don't eat the turtle soup. And you have to look for all of these things if you're going to get to the very root cause of why an organ lost its power. And so everything else you do, if you don't get to the root cause, it simply comes back. Now, polarity is the key to the universe and to health. So everything in the universe is about polarity. It's north and south, it's up and down, it's right and left, it's rich and poor, it's men and women, it's hot and cold. Everything's about polarity. And of course, around the human body, we have a spinning vortex. The upper one goes one direction, the other one goes the opposite direction. And what you may be able to see here is you see this vortex right here. So scalar energy comes from the universe and comes down and comes to a point. And then from the earth itself, it comes up this way and comes to a point, and they meet in the heart. So the heart is where the energies collide with the scalar. And by the way, it's of some interest that blood begins to move in a fetus before the heart ever starts to beat. And it's because of the scalar energy that is imploded into the heart, which allows it to start moving, as well as the various polarities of different vessels. So here you can see the correct polarity. The correct polarity is that things spin clockwise, and a reverse polarity is it spins counterclockwise. So whether we're talking about the weather, whether we're talking about emotions, as you'll see, whether we're talking about the power in our circuits, whatever you're talking about, if things are malfunctioning, then it almost always is because that thing has reversed its polarity and therefore can no longer function normally. And if it's a circuit, the reverse polarity blocks the flow of energy through that circuitry. And so, as I'll teach you in one of the takeaways from this lecture, I hope, is to understand that if things have a reverse polarity, the only thing that will reverse it, will take it back to normal, is scalar energy. And so if you begin to understand the concept of reverse polarity and that you can fix it with scalar, you suddenly have one of the most powerful tools that I've been able to enjoy in my over 60 years in medicine. This is the missing piece for almost everything, and that is correcting polarity in whatever is not working. Now, our body's wired up with what are called Tesla resonating circuits. Half of our organs are capacitors, half of them are coils. Capacitors are all along the back of the body, coils along the front of the body, and then they're wired together, as you can see, in these very specific orders, creating what Tesla called his resonating circuit, which is the basic of all electronics. And so the power of the organs really is dependent upon the polarity. As you can say, the coils along the front of the body are always plus, and the capacitors along the back of the body are minus. So there's the polarity. Now here you can see also a chart that has a lot of numbers on it. Sometimes when I show this chart, people say, didn't anybody ever teach you not to put so many numbers on one slide? Well, I've done it on purpose because I want you to see that here you can see that minus 20 millivolts is the same as a pH of 7.35, and minus 25 millivolts is a pH of 7.44. So this is where cells are normally designed to run. And then if you need 50 millivolts, which is a pH of 7.88 in order to repair things. But the interesting thing is you begin to go from electron donor to electron stealer, as you cross the 7.0, which is zero voltage, then you flip the polarity from minus to plus. And so chronic disease occurs always down in this area, and cancer always occurs at plus 30 millivolts. So we start with a battery that's charged, and then there are these multiple things, again, don't eat the turtle soup things up here. Each one of them drains the battery a little bit and a little bit more, and finally, when you've drained it completely, it's flipped its polarity. And so once it's flipped its polarity and the battery is upside down, it won't take a charge. And so then using scalar energy, this is my biotransducer, which puts out scalar, will flip the polarity back to normal. And then once the polarity is normal, you can charge the battery back again. And once the cells have power, they start working again. And if you have the 50 millivolts, they start making new ones that repair things. And so the body never forgets how to heal itself. It just has to have the power to do it and all the nutrients it takes to make new cells and get rid of the toxins that damage things as fast as you can make them. So that's kind of the summary. Here's a list of sort of electron stealers and electron donors, and you can tell the difference between those two. For lack of time, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that slide, but begin to talk to you about scalar energy itself. Now, there are various types of energy. Everybody knows about electromagnetic energy, but very few people know about scalar. And so lightning strikes the earth every second someplace on the earth. And what happens is that it goes into the earth, turns around, bounces back, and goes out and hits the ionosphere, and then comes back again. So it's ping-ponging back and forth between the earth and the ionosphere. So when the two of them happen to strike nose to nose, the energies began to slide into each other until they are balanced and end up in what's called a cuboctahedron. So a cuboctahedron is simply a storage. It's the only shape in the universe in which all the energies within it are balanced perfectly, and that's why it's invisible. So the entire universe is filled with scalar energy. So scalar energy is simply sitting there waiting to do something. So basically, it's a little bit like your checking account and your savings account. Your savings account's sitting there ready to help you when you need it, but nothing much happens unless you instruct it to do so, and you transfer it into your checking account. Whereas your checking account is active all day long as you're writing checks and making deposits. So again, if from an energetic standpoint, you can think of scalar as your savings account allows you to be alive. So again, here you can see some examples. So the energies of the universe either implode or explode or are scalar. So an imploding energy spins clockwise and comes down and concentrates itself. This is the one, this is the concentrating. This is the implosion one, concentrates its energy into what amounts to a black hole, where there's a great deal of energy, where an explosion starts its way, spins counterclockwise, and eventually dissipates its energy, much like an explosion. Whereas scalar energy is the entire universe sitting there with balanced energy, waiting to do something. So these two are what people know about. Most people don't think about them, but nevertheless, people think about things like tornadoes. They're aware of things like bombs, but most people don't think about anything about the fact that the other is scalar because it's invisible. Now, scalar energy has been known for since recorded time. Over time, it's been given all of these different names because people could see its effects, but they didn't know what it was. I like to also talk about theories. You know, theories are things that people make some observations and they say, looks to me like so-and-so is the way things work. And they develop a theory based on that. And then you go out and you try to prove or disprove that theory by doing some controlled tests. And they come up with some idea about whether things are correct or incorrect. I have my own theory of how scalar works, which is the one that I basically just shared with you. And so, again, I think that scalar energy is primarily created by lightning and becomes this savings account of a cube octahedron, which, by the way, this basic concept was developed by the physicist Nassim Haramein. And here's another image that depicts a scalar energy in a cube octahedron. Now, one of the interesting things about this whole concept is that it also allows us to begin to understand some of the confusion about physics. So without getting too far in the weeds, in this limited time we have, there are many problems with standard physics. The concept in standard physics, of course, is that we have electrons spinning around a proton, the electrons being negative, the proton being positive. But the people who started working on atomic theory back with Einstein and Bohr and Heisenberg and those guys had several issues. They could never figure out exactly, first of all, if these are spinning around, well, why didn't they lose their energy and collapse onto the proton? Also, Heisenberg kept trying to figure out where these things were in space, and every time he tried to do so, he couldn't figure it out. And he said, well, every time I thought about one, it moved. And there are many other theories of physics that are problematic. In standard physics, one of the things that's discussed that if you do a study and the results are slightly different than the theory on which you're testing, you say, well, we can ignore the study because it's only a little bit different. On the other hand, if you do a test against a theory and it's way off, then they ignore it because they call it normalization. Well, I'm looking for a banker that'll normalize my bank account. So when it's way overdrawn, he'll just ignore it. Well, nevertheless, those are strange theories in standard physics. And the other one has to do with what's called quantum mechanics or quantum physics. And that is to say that if you want to know, if you fly a straight line between, say, Dallas and Houston, and you say, well, it is, I'm just making up these numbers, but let's say it's 300 miles and it's 470 miles, and both answers are correct. That's quantum physics. Well, that doesn't make any sense at all, does it? It can't be both. It's one or the other or something, other number, but it's an exact number from one city limits to the other city limits. And it can't be two different numbers. And yet that's accepted as part of quantum mechanics. So again, it doesn't make any sense. So I have a theory that this is what an atom really is. It is that an electron is simply energy that is spinning clockwise and comes to a point and forms a black hole that stores the energy. Now, if this theory, what I like about this theory, and obviously it's my theory, is that it explains all that other stuff. And that is, there is no such thing as a proton. It's just a black hole where the energy is stored. And the reason Heisenberg never could find where the electron was is because it was always spinning, but also it was getting smaller and smaller as it concentrates the energy, et cetera, et cetera. So I put this out there as a possible theory. I may be completely out to lunch about this. Some people continue to claim that my cheese has slipped off the cracker, and they may be correct. But nevertheless, in my way of thinking, and it helps me understand the energies of the body, and particularly as we began to get into scalar. So the Platonic solids are spheres, cubes, pyramids, tetrahedrons, etc., as you can see in this slide. And what you find is that scalar energy will implode inside anything that is a Platonic solid. And so one of the reasons that a tennis ball or a ping pong ball or a basketball bounces is because of its shape. Because of its shape, the invisible scalar energy implodes into the center of it and gives it the energy. So that's an important concept. And also what you can begin to see is that, as I showed you earlier, here's a photograph of an actual black hole in the universe. Here is the concept that you have spinning energies that collide with each other. And as they do, sort of like I show in this diagram, they form a cuboctahedron, which is a storage of energy. And again, I showed you earlier in a slide how these vortices of energy actually, one from the top and the one from the bottom, meet in the heart and concentrate the energy there. And again, here's another picture of the black hole, but here's the biogeometry that Ibrahim Karim talks about with the golden center. And again, you can see the same basic concept of all of these other things colliding and concentrating in the center. And then we can get a little bit out in the weeds with understanding how things that have what's called a digital root of 9 cause an implosion of energy into the body, and then it hands it off to things that have a digital root of 3 and 9. And I know that doesn't make any sense at the moment, but again, I've written about this and talked about it in some other places. But one of the things that's fascinating is that all of the great religious structures of the world, of all different religions, are built over spots of the earth in which there is scalar energy coming directly out of the earth. And so they Ibrahim Karim went to all of these various places and measured that inside of them is this enormous amount of scalar energy. And of course, it's there for, not only is it coming out of the ground, but because this is a hemisphere, it concentrates scalar energy and focuses it down into the center of the religious structure. So you walk in and you actually can feel the difference. But also they all have this hole at the top, so that as the scalar energy bounces off the floor, it has a way to get back out when it reverses its polarity. And of course, many people think this is the modern Tesla. Konstantin Mael in Germany has been able to prove that Scalar energy is what powers our DNA, because DNA is the right shape to cause it to implode into it. It reads the genetic code, talks to the adjacent cells through scalar energy, and when a new cell is made, it copies the code to the new cell. So again, you begin to understand that scalar energy is the essence of life itself. And so if you ignore scalar energy, you'll never quite understand physiology. And here's some of the work that Mael has published. So again, you can pause your video and go back and look at it. Now, there's an interesting concept about whether scalar energy is sound. Now, with sound, you have to understand there are different definitions. As sound is the frequency range that the human ear can hear, but that's not all of the frequencies. Our ears can't hear the ones that are lower or higher than that. And yet we have recorded in the universe that the universe is full of sound itself, which makes sense since it's full of scalar. Let's begin to see if we can apply some of these concepts to emotions and to the human physiology. So one of the important things to understand is that we have different parts of our brain. The thinking part of our brain is powered by electromagnetic energy, whereas the old limbal part of our brain is powered by scalar energy. Two different parts with different kinds of energy. And so all animals have this old limbal part and only a smaller part of the thinking part. So 40% of the human brain is the thinking part, where only 3% of a cat's brain is that, and 7% in a dog. Now, it's kind of fascinating to me that, we know that dogs in particular are capable of sensing things that humans tend to ignore. So how do they do it? Well, if only 7% of a dog's brain is thinking, that means obviously that 93% is running on scalar. And because scalar carries not only the energy, it carries information, then dogs begin to pick that up and can actually follow the scent, or they can be aware. So a dog can wake up in the middle of the night and start barking because it's aware that there's something threatening nearby. And a human either doesn't wake up or wakes up and says, "Shut up, dog." And so again, you begin to understand some of the things that these animals like dogs can do is because they are running primarily, their brains running primarily on scalar. And so they're picking up information that the rest of us are ignoring. Now, at the top of our limbal brain is a thing called the pineal gland, which is the scalar brain's antenna. It both transmits and receives. So if you walk into a room, you may sense, hey, I don't belong in this room. I need to get out of here. Well, it's because someone who has ill intent is transmitting that ill intent through their pineal gland, and you're picking up with your pineal gland saying, something's wrong here. Or on the other hand, you can walk into a room and you get all of this good feelings and great energy and great whatever, and you see that people are surrounding somebody else, and you want to go over there too. Again, you're getting this transmission. There are so many examples of how this works, and I'm sure all of you have experienced it. You say, "Oh, the phone's about to ring, and it's my mom calling from Seattle or something," and sure enough, the phone rings, and there's mom. Perfect example for me is that for years I had a nurse that followed me around in my ophthalmology practice. When I had to quit working, she went back to Utah and worked there. My wife and I were in Hawaii some months later. I woke up one morning and I said, "Something's wrong with Susie." My wife said, "Have you talked to her?" I said, "No, I haven't talked to her for months." She said, "Well, you better call her." So I called, and her father had just died. So she's in Salt Lake City and I'm in Honolulu. How did I know that? Because scalar energy is transmitted throughout the entire universe and with information as well. And so her pineal was putting out the signal that what just happened, and mine just happened to pick it up. So one of the things that's quite interesting is the difference between the thinking brain and the scalar brain, and that is that the thinking brain can lie to you The scalar brain cannot. Let me pause there a minute. Your thinking brain can lie to you. Your scalar brain cannot. And so one of the things that you can say, you can convince yourself that so-and-so is the truth because that's what you want it to be, but it may be a lie. Whereas if you test with your scalar brain, you will always get the truth as long as you are sure you are tuned into your scalar brain and not your thinking brain. And the reason, of course, has to do with the polarity. Again, you should also know that our memories are stored in our scalar brain with the correct polarity, and our body's happy for them to be there. Whereas on the other hand, our stressful emotions are stored with reverse polarity, and that's how they cause problems. Because once you have something that's reverse polarity, energy cannot flow through it. And so the way our stressful emotions make us sick is they block the flow of energy going through our brain. And once they block the energy in that circuit, it lowers the voltage in that circuit so that you no longer have the 25 millivolts for cells to work, and you certainly don't have the 50 millivolts for cells to be repaired. And that's how our stressful emotions make us sick, is they block the voltage in our circuit. Our cells don't have the power to work and repair, and so eventually that organ fails us. So again, high on the list of things that chronic disease is the reverse polarity caused by stressful emotions. Now, one of the magic things that I hope you'll take away from my conversation with you today is that scalar energy is capable of reversing the polarity anywhere polarity in the universe is incorrect. And therefore, scalar energy is capable of turning our stressful emotions back into being just memories, which the body's okay with them being there, and they no longer block the circuit. So the more I learn about this, the more I began to realize that understanding that emotions block circuits as effectively as a switch, as a circuit breaker, you began to understand its power in being able to help people get well. So a perfect example has happened recently. One of my sons, who is quite familiar with what I teach and how it has all the tools to fix it, like so many people often become busy. They say, oh, well, I'll check my circuits tomorrow, and then they quit doing it, and then they don't. All of a sudden, things begin to go bad. Well, and it can be either all of a sudden or it can take some time. So, for example, the mother of one of my sons died about 5 years ago. And of course, that caused a great deal of grief for all of us, but particularly this son. And so the grief that was involved with that was able to be stored in his limbic brain with reverse polarity. The Chinese have taught us, or Oriental medicine has taught us, that grief is associated with the lung large intestine circuit. So when you lose power in those circuits, say, for example, when you lose power in the large intestine circuit, you lose peristalsis, and it can no longer have the pumping effect to effectively get rid of sewage. So sewage begins, your feces begins to just become stagnant in your large intestine and eventually forms a rock. And so those rocks begin to occlude the large intestine partially or completely. And that's the actual real cause of what has been called irritable bowel syndrome. So irritable bowel is always caused by grief. Now it sits there putting out poisons and blocking up your sewage, and more sewage comes into it. And so you're poisoning yourself 24/7. But you've also lost power in the lung large intestine circuit. Now it's of some interest that the power supply to the part of the visual pathway from what's called the chiasm, where the optic nerves cross just behind your eyes, back to the side of your brain, is powered by the lung large intestine circuit. So he lost power in that circuit. And when he lost power in that circuit, it was adequate to cause that eye to go almost completely blind in a matter of hours as it accumulated. And so all of a sudden, the only thing he could see was fingers in front of his eyes. And he happened to be out of the country at the time. And when he got back, then we began to realize what was going on. So he did the necessary colonics to get the feces blockage out of his intestine. We used what I'm teaching you how, using the scalar energy to flip his circuits back on, and then use the scalar energy to turn the grief into just a memory, so it's no longer problematic. So he could only see fingers in front of his eyes, and then I did his emotional release with the scalar energy. And once I was finished, 30, 40 minutes later, he could read 2,200. And now a couple of weeks later, he's back to 2025 and reading some of the 2020 letters, which, by the way, any ophthalmologist will tell you that never happens. Once you've lost the voltage, the vision like that, it never comes back. So again, it only comes back when you understand the connections between the emotions and the function of the organs and how to turn it back on using scalar energy. So again, scalar energy, you can get it from things like my biotransducer, tuning forks, and magnets all put out scalar in various amounts of power. So obviously a tuning fork, you may be able to hear it a few yards away. The biotransducer, the energy from it can be measured a city block away. So it's much more powerful. But again, you can see the diagrams that I showed you before, the vortex coming down and meeting at the heart, this one meeting at the heart, creating some scalar here. But then we're surrounded by this scalar field, and all of our emotions are stored in this field. And out at the edge, and it's actually a recording of everything that's ever happened to you. So out the edge of it is a recording of birth, and up against you is today. So you're carrying around with you the diary of your entire existence, and it keeps being added to every day. And if you go through this space or are paying attention, you can begin to identify places where the polarity is flipped based on at what point in your life it happened. And then using scalar energy, you can turn it around back to being the right polarity. And now it's no longer distressing your field, and therefore no longer blocking the circuitry. Now, the best way to figure out what polarity is with muscle testing, or what is known as kinesiology. And so let's take a look at some concepts about that. So the issue is, it takes a little while to learn how to do kinesiology, but some people pick it up in a matter of a few minutes. Some people keep working at it for a few months because they have a hard time getting out of their thinking brain. But what I found is that the easiest way to do it is to make circles with your fingers, your index finger and your thumb, and hook those together like a chain. Now, then you say something you know is true. So I say, my name is Jerry, and I pull on that, and you'll see that the chain is unbroken. It stays, my two circles of my hands stay tight. Now, you don't pull hard, you just pull enough to see that it is secure. Now I say something that's a lie. I say, my name is Susie, and do that. But when I tell a lie, it makes my whole body go weak, and my fingers will pop open. So then I come back and I say, I live in the Dallas area. Okay, that's strong. I say, I live in Chicago. That should make me go weak. If it's still strong when I say I live in Chicago, obviously I'm in my thinking brain because I told a lie and it didn't make me go weak. So you keep doing that over and over and over again until you can do it easily. So it's a little bit like people who are bilingual. You can have somebody who speaks, let's say, English and Spanish. They say one sentence in English, the next one in Spanish, the next one in English, and never miss a beat. When you get to that point, you are able to quickly change back and forth between your thinking brain and your scalar brain. Once you get there, then you can easily check the circuitry in your body to see which circuits are flipped off and on. So here in this diagram, you can see the various circuits. So on the top of the head is the gallbladder circuit. So you would simply touch that and say, my gallbladder circuit is on, or the correct polarity. And then you pull your fingers, and if it's strong, it says it's on. If they pop open, that circuit's off. And you go through each one of these. And so I've got videos out there that go into some length about kinesiology, et cetera. But I encourage you to learn how to do this. So I like to say, if I'm going to drive from Dallas to Chicago, how often am I going to check my gas gauge? Pretty often, otherwise I'll run out of gas and end up in the ditch. Well, if you're going to live the rest of your life, how often should you check your power gauges? Well, you should check them every day, twice a day. So, you get up in the morning, you brush your teeth, and you check your polarities. You go to bed at night, you brush your teeth, and you check your polarities. And if you find it's off, then you use your biotransducer to flip the polarity back on, charge that circuit back up, and then you're good to go. And then you keep doing that. And if you find the circuit continues to be flipping off, then you have to say, okay, why is it flipping off? And you go through the 5 reasons I've given you. Don't eat the turtle soup. Look for dental problems and infections, emotions, toxins, hypothyroidism, not enough thyroid hormone, and scars, and fix all of those. And now your circuits will stay on. So again, the magic of understanding this is understanding, again, all chronic disease begins when an organ loses its power. Let me say it one more time. All chronic disease begins when an organ loses its power. And it loses its power when it flips its polarity. And it flips its polarity when the don't eat the turtle soup things add enough together to drain your circuitry to zero, and it'll flip its polarity. If you don't know that you flip the polarity, you are guaranteed that the organs that are powered by that particular circuit will fail you and eventually do you in. That will be the end of you. So if you want to live a long and healthful life and keep your family alive, take the time to learn how to check your circuits and get the technology that you need to turn it back on. And just be sure that you keep all your circuitry on. Otherwise, the poor results are guaranteed. Now, again, in this image, you can see how you can take a battery, drain it to zero, flips its polarity, put it in a battery charger, it won't take a charge. And then if you do the same on your body, you can use the scalar energy and shine it at your pineal gland, or you can actually put it between your legs and it will go up the spine to that part of your brain and fix things as well. And then you have to charge it up with electromagnetic. And of course, I'm biased toward the design of the biomodulator because it does indeed put out the proper type of energy pattern to recharge circuitry. So a lot of people are suffering with brain fog, etc. And it's again about the power supply in the brain and the brain frequencies. So we have these 5 different frequencies in the brain. It's very much like a gear shift car. Delta frequency is first gear, and that's when you're asleep. Theta is not quite awake and not quite asleep. It's a little bit faster. Alpha is daydreaming, and beta is thinking. And then gamma is a frequency that is higher than all those others and actually helps us move those. So in our clinic, for example, we have the technology where we can put some electrodes on your head and measure which gear you're in. And if you're in a too low a gear, then we can use these frequencies to move your voltage up into the higher levels and start getting rid of the brain fog. But the reason that the brain downshifts, in my belief, is that when you lose power to the circuits in the brain, in order to keep yourself from having a seizure, you downshift. And so what you want to do if you're having trouble with brain fog, etc., is turn all the power onto the brain, and then you can upshift it into a higher gear, and it will maintain itself. So I think probably this is a good time for me to stop and take some questions. But I want to tell you that, I have numerous videos at various lengths about these subjects, and I'm constantly, at the moment, creating more and putting them up. So every week or two, I'm putting up some more new videos that goes into even greater detail about these things. And so, of course, we would love to have any of you who really want to get into this come and spend a weekend with me so I can actually teach you how to do all these things so you can go home and keep your family well.
That was a great overview of scalar energy and the emotions. And I came across muscle testing or applied kinesiology. Gosh, I did martial arts back when I was a kid, and we had a really forward-thinking sensei. And I remember actually going to his house for weekends with a bunch of the different students. And we would do what was called Touch for Health at the time. And we would learn Touch for Health so that we could actually run each other's meridians and see what was weak before we would go into competition. So we'd be treating each other before we would actually go into compete. And so I got exposed to that back when I was probably like 15 or 16, a long time ago. I'm 51 now. So I got exposed to that early on, and then I really started to get more into it when I came across the work with Dr. David Hawkins, and he did a lot of that work with muscle testing as well. And I like the way you explained it with thinking brain and scalar energy, and it's absolutely something that works when you've put the time in to get out of your thinking brain, and then you actually can start to really trust the data that's coming up. But I know clinically, when I've used it, it's been a phenomenal piece of information for us to be able to get information that you just can't get a lot of the other times.
Well, you're absolutely right. I mean, there's so many things you can do for it, not only in medicine. So I like to say my wife sends me to the grocery store to buy bread. Well, there are 20 different kinds. I don't know which one to buy. So I simply say, which one of these is the most nutritious for my family? And I will take in muscle tests. I'd love to use the pendulum. This one, no. This one, no. This one, no. This one, yes. Okay, I'll buy that one. Or I come home, I've been gone for 2 or 3 weeks. I would say, I wonder if this milk is still good. I don't know. Let's test it. Is this milk still safe for me to drink? No. Okay, pour it out. Yes, go ahead and use it. I mean, it can go on and on and on. There's so many things beyond, but you can do the same thing in the body. Somebody comes in with severe back pain. All right, is that pancreatitis or they passing a kidney stone? Is it kidney stone? No, it's pancreatitis. Yes. Okay. Now I'm very quickly, but I don't have to wait for labs. I know what's going on. And I go ahead and order the labs and whatever, but isn't it nice to know immediately? And then, of course, we do the same thing for, this is one of the hardest things for parents and their or patients and their families when they come in. They say, okay, what's the protocol? What are you going to do for me today? And I say, I don't know. I haven't asked your body yet. That's because your body knows what it needs, not me. I'm just guessing, but your body will tell me exactly what it needs. So we have our list of our therapies. All right, does this patient need, this therapy? No. This one, no. This one, yes. This one, yes. This one, no. Okay, that's what we do today. And
Yeah.
tomorrow it's different because things have changed. So each day, each morning when the patients come in, my staff tests and asks each patient's body, what do you need today? But it's hard for a lot of times for patients and family have no concept about energy in begin with, and then to say, well, I don't know, I haven't asked your body yet. It drives them nuts. They get cross-eyed. But once they're here a little while, then they begin to see the difference. And then, for example, I had a patient come in and was on like 15 different medicines. So I went through and muscle tested and found that they shouldn't be taking all but 2 of them. So I set those aside, and then I brought the family in and I said, okay, I'm going to use you as a surrogate for this child who's on all these medicines. And so I would have her hold it up against her, say, does this child need this? No. This? No. And because once the family saw her getting a no for all the answers, they were very comfortable saying, okay, we can quit all that stuff. So again, there's so many things you can do with it. Again, but it doesn't make sense of what you're doing until you understand that the scalar brain will not let you lie. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, well, and that you've got access to all of this information that's there. It's almost like you said at the beginning. It's all this this energy or information that's sort of available, but until you sort of choose to actually access it, it's sort of invisible. So you're by doing this, you're bringing the invisible to light. You're able to actually use it and interact with it.
For those of you who are spiritual, it's actually scriptural. The scriptures don't say, well, do whatever you want to do. I'm going to take care of you. I'll keep you out of trouble. Nah, that's not the way it works. Scriptures say, ask and you shall receive. Ask. And so oftentimes, when I'm working with patients, I'll ask, what do you want to have happen while you're here at our clinic? What is your goal? Verbalize to me, ask what you want. Don't ask me, ask the guy upstairs what you want, and he will help me know what to do for you. So, any other questions I can answer?
This is really fascinating because my background, which I actually didn't complete my studies, but my background and my passion was in psychology, and I studied Western psychology, and a lot of it was great, and a lot of it I just didn't resonate with, and so talk therapy is the thinking brain.
Yes.
When you typically go in and have a session, you're very much ruminating and going over circumstances and experiences and interactions through the thinking brain. So this is a whole field that just needs to be turned upside down and inside out.
Yeah, one of the fun things is the way that I do emotional releases now is I use two biotransducers aimed at each other, so that the scalar energy is actually hitting each other, creating a real fireball of energy. And then I hold a pendulum over it. And then we will find out which emotion the patient needs to deal with most. And then we'll say, okay, let's start reversing the polarity, because that's what the emotion is. It's reverse polarity. And the pendulum will start spinning counterclockwise. And then it will change and it'll spin clockwise, and it peels that first part of it. And then it'll do the next part, and it peels that part of it. And then it'll stop, and it'll just sit there. And you have to just wait a little while before it can crack through the next hard layer of the emotion. And then here it goes again. And usually what follows when it pauses, when it starts up again, there's so much energy, it spins like a helicopter. And then finally it'll get through it and start slowing down, and it'll do the other direction. And you keep doing that and keep doing that and keep doing that. And you finally drill all the way down. Now, one of the fascinating things is if you say, okay, let's say we're dealing with grief or anger or whatever. They'll say, where do you feel it in your body? Because most people never think about feeling an emotion in their body. And many times they'll say, it's here in my heart. Sometimes it'll be somewhere else, it can be in a knee. And so you say, okay, feel it there and close your eyes. And you say, what color is it? And they'll always give you a color. You say, what shape is it? Well, almost always in the beginning, the shape is irregular, like spokes or wavy or whatever. And then you say, is it moving? And usually the movement is sort of random or unpredictable or zooming in and out or something. But as you keep going deeper and deeper, you'll eventually get to where the movement is always counterclockwise.
Mm.
And the colors keep changing, the shapes keep changing. And as you get toward the end, you get down toward the real nexus of when this emotion began, they usually start seeing images. And they'll see a field with blowing grass. They'll see a mountain with the sky. They'll see something like, oh, I see an old car I used to have, or I'll see my family, or I'll see, like yesterday somebody said, first they saw a bird and then it became an eagle, and et cetera. So they see all sorts of things. And when they start seeing those images, you're getting closer to the end of resolving that one. And there's usually another 10 minutes or so after that as you get beyond that. And then most of the time when you have resolved it, the image is a white sphere that's spinning clockwise. So you correct the polarity.
Mm.
Now, sometimes, and in a certain percentage of cases, instead of seeing a white sphere, they'll see a rainbow. And once you get to the rainbow, and you can ask a question, are we done here? And you'll say, yeah, we fixed that one. So it's interesting that what they see while you're changing the polarities of that emotion back to being a memory. And you'll see their color change before your very eyes. As you're sitting there watching them, you can see their pasty skin begin to pink up. And when they wake up, you'll see their dull eyes now are bright and crisp and sharp. And they just change in front of your eyes. It's one of the most powerful things that we know how to do in our clinic. So again, what I find for most of the serious illness, the most serious illnesses of all, if you can get rid of the dental and get rid of the emotions, they almost always get well. If you don't, they almost never do. But you got to do both of those. And anything short of that is okay, you make them a bit better, Again, you can make people better by just turning their circuits on and putting power in, but that won't hold and it won't get everywhere it needs to go if you don't fix the blockages. And the blockages in the circuit are almost always dental and emotions. Yes.
Wow. Dr. Tennant, how does that tie in? It's almost like when you're going through that process and it's almost like incoherent for the first little while. And then as the healing happens, it's like getting more and more coherent. I can't help but think of the biowaters that are changing as they are becoming more structured, probably in the process of healing that emotion and sort of breaking that down. What are your thoughts with
What's the difference between good water and bad water? It's polarity.
Mhm.
Everything's about polarity. All right. So if you got the bad water, you got something in there that's a reverse polarity. And reverse polarity things not only block circuits, but are electron stealers. All right. So again, once you start thinking about polarity and scalar, it makes perfect sense. And then things that we couldn't quite understand before, we say, well, we know this structured water helps. Well, but what's the difference? How is it structured? It's structured because the polarity is correct. And what caused it to be correct? Scalar energy. So it takes some time to unlearn what we thought we knew. But as you begin to allow yourself to say, well, that doesn't make quite sense, or how did that work? And you start thinking in terms of scalar and polarity, you say, oh, well, of course, dummy. Why did it take you so long to figure that out?
Dr. Tennant, what are some of the best ways for people to see where their circuits are at? So I think you went through some muscle testing them, and then as far as assessing voltage in their body, if they can use the biotransducer to do that, or the biomodulator, but as regards to pH, how can they sort of tie that back in to see where they are on a regular basis?
Well, in my journey, I spent a lot of time looking at, urine pH and salivary pH and all that stuff. And then for many years, we used either the Nakatani system or the Vol system to measure the circuitry. But the problem with those is they don't tell you about polarity. Because to measure with those things, they use an ohm meter. And they're measured because you can't use a voltmeter because the voltage in the body is doing this. So you don't know where you are. So Vol and Nakatani use an ohm meter, which gives you a reading of impedance. And then if you assume with Ohm's law that voltage equals impedance times resistance, if you assume that the impedance is the amount of power you put through is constant, then voltage equals the impedance. So we used that for a number of years. And eventually we began to realize, I should quit wasting my time on figuring out which circuit has got how much voltage in it at this moment, because the body's constantly moving voltage from place to place. So, the chairman of the medical school in Omaha always said, the body will always move the energy around to keep the heart and brain working and let everything else go if it needs to. And you see that happen at different times of the day. The body voltage will change in any circuit as the requirements change. But the only thing that's really important, switch circuits have flipped their polarity. So we basically quit measuring all that stuff. It just was wasting time. And so we don't use the biomodulator to either, though it tries to measure, we don't do it anymore. We don't use the mead anymore. We don't use the Vol anymore. All I want to know is which of your circuits have flipped those polarities, because those are the ones that will kill you. And I've got to get those figured out and turn them back on and figure out why they flipped. And so everything else is a waste of time. It's maybe interesting, but it's a waste of time.
That's good to know, though. So then basically going through the applied kinesiology testing or using the pendulum to see if it's in polarity.
That's what you got to know.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
that makes sense.
Now, one of the things we found, the Volden and Nakatani try to measure the power in your acupuncture circuits, in your muscle battery packs. But one of the interesting things is that phase angle will actually measure the voltage in your cell membranes. So we've gone back to, which we were doing 15 years ago, doing the biological impedance analysis device again. And I've created the chart that will convert the phase angle into voltage. And so it's very quick. It tells me what the cells are doing, which is what I really also need to know. And I find that it's very convenient, but of course it also gives me total body water, intracellular water, extracellular water, total muscle mass, total fat mass, got all this information that quick. And so that's what we're doing. And we found that perhaps more instructive than doing just the muscle battery packs. All I want to know about the muscle battery packs is which ones, if any, have flipped their polarity. And then don't eat the turtle soup, it's why.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
Fascinating.
Simple, right?
Yeah. Well, that's what I love about the whole system is it actually pulls so much information into very doable practical steps as far as what needs to be looked at first and prioritizes it and makes it really, really straightforward to follow.
And one of the things is people always want to say, well, how can I do this at home? And some of it you can, but it takes some time to figure it out. But we encourage people to come and spend the weekend with us in our seminars because we try very hard to teach you the things to go home and help. But if you're really sick, some of the things are harder, particularly for you to do, and particularly if you're really down in a hole, if you got a really serious illness, there are things that you can't do as very efficiently at home. So, we have hundreds of thousands of dollars of equipment in the office that allows us to do things more powerfully than you can do with the home technologies. And so come in and let us say, okay, here's what's wrong. Here you can go home and fix it. And here's how you do it. Here's what's wrong, but you need to spend some time with us to get some of these things done. And then you can go home and stay well. So we're always encouraging people to come and let us educate you. A great part of the visit to our clinic is education. We try very hard not to let anybody go home without them and their family member knowing how to check their circuits, and when they find them out, how to fix them, keep them on. Because if you can go home and keep all your circuits on, and by the way, it's very hard to do if you got emotional baggage. If you go home and keep all your circuits on, then the future of your health is going to be a lot different than if you don't. So don't do what I did, fade away. Isn't it wonderful to begin to understand that it's really quite simple? The hard part is to quit, to unlearn the things we thought we knew. But the ability the fact that you can treat all chronic disease with one system instead of spending 8 years in medical school and residency learning different systems for different illnesses, you don't need to do that anymore because all illnesses, it follows the same pathway. And of course, it goes back to the old argument between
Pasteur and Béchamp.
yeah, Pasteur and Béchamp. Is it all about infections or is it about the environment or the milieu? And of course, now we know it's all about everything in the body working the way it was tuned and designed to work. And you can't just fix one thing. And of course, that's one of the problems with modern medicine is, you go to the cardiologist and he says, well, and you say, well, I don't breathe well. Well, then you need to go see the lung doctor. The lung doctor says, how are you sleeping at night? Well, I don't sleep at night. Well, here, let's put you on some sleeping pills. And if that doesn't work, then you need to go see the guy's psychologist, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's so segmented that nobody figures out that it's all about the same. By the way, sometime we should have a discussion about insomnia, which is a big problem, which turns out to be basically due to loss of adrenal function. insomnia is almost pure and simple, the dream failure.
Mhm.
And
Well,
others.
we'll connect up with you guys again, and maybe we'll do periodically. We'll take different sections and we'll have conversations around. I think that would be really fun. For now, Dr. Tennant, where is the best place for people to learn more about the work that you guys are doing and where they can access you guys most easily?
Well, our website is tenantinstitute.com, and Tennant has two N's in the middle, Tennant, institute.com. And then also the medical device company is Synergy, SENERGY.us. And so those our nutritional things is tennantproducts.com. We have a nutritional system that there's nothing else on the planet that has all of the stuff in it that our stuff has. So again, those are our sources that you can go to and see our videos, see what we do. Or you can call the clinic. We have people on staff that will set up a phone call with you and spend time with you answering your questions about, what do we do? How do we do it? Why do we do it? And so you can find all of that on our website, and we look forward to helping you.
Thank
Dr.
you very
Tennant,
much.
thank you very much. And we'll have all those links in the show notes so everybody can check that out. And wonderful to chat with you, Dr. Tennant, and we look forward to doing it again soon.
All right, be well.